Hello and welcome to the Blockade Runner podcast number 281. My name is John, and joining me today, as always, is Ryan. What's up, Ryan?
Hello. Happy Star Wars Day.
Yeah, happy Star Wars Day. May the 4th be with you. How have you been celebrating, Ryan?
By watching Formula One.
I thought you were going to say that. Yeah,
Yeah.
cool. All right, that's good.
I think we spotted Adam Driver on the track at Miami. Not totally sure though. Cannot confirm.
Okay, all right, yeah. Adam Driver, of course, starred in Ferrari, right? Was that the name of the film,
Mm-hmm.
Ferrari?
Yeah.
So maybe he's a fan of high-powered auto vehicles or whatever.
He is. He infamously waved the checkered flag in a very erratic manner at one race a couple years ago.
Okay. All right. Cool. Confirmed then.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I have been celebrating Star Wars Day by winning Star Wars trivia, pub trivia.
Wow.
So yeah, the Wat Tambours ride again. That is the team name that my friend Jeremy and I use to do Star Wars trivia when it comes around, which is usually this time of year.
Mm-hmm.
Most pub trivia hosts or whatever like to do a Star Wars trivia in May. So there was one going on this afternoon, and we went and we won. It was original trilogy pub trivia, and big group of people, maybe 8, 10, 12 teams, something like that. Three-way tie for first place going into, or like after the final question. So we had a tiebreaker, and the tiebreaker question was wild, Ryan. It was how many episodes of Star Wars television, live action Star Wars television, have been released as of now. And so we had to like total up how many episodes of the 7 television shows, live action shows that have been released there are. So, but it was tricky because, like, I mean, we didn't get the question right. The correct answer is 79, and we guessed 80 episodes. So somewhere in there, I'm thinking it's Book of Boba Fett, but I'm not 100% sure. But somewhere in there, one of the shows has an odd number of episodes. But anyway, we got really close, and it was closer than any other team, so we won. Yeah.
Great. Congratulations.
Well, thank you. Yeah. But Ryan, before we start recording, you asked me if we were going to spend the bulk of the episode discussing my Star Wars pub trivia success today. We're not. We're actually going to spend the bulk of the episode discussing Andor Season 2, Episodes 4, 5, and 6. So, let's jump into it, unless there's anything else you want to discuss.
Before that, we need to plug Flashback 64 dropped a podcast with us on it today.
Yes, absolutely. Okay, yeah, for sure. Definitely was going to bring that up at the end of the show, but maybe the top of the show is better. You're right, because that way everyone will hear it, not just those who make it through the end of the show. So, yeah, we did an episode with our friends at Flashback 64 about the Star Wars special editions, which was super fun, and that just released today for Star Wars Day. So I was telling Goo when he was setting it all up, like, oh wow, you do this like like how a professional would do it. Like, you're organized and you know ahead of time what your topics are going to be, and you like.
Yeah.
He sent me an invite in, I think, February to do the episode. It might have been January to do the episode in March, and I was like, oh, this is how an adult does it. This is how somebody who like, So that was cool.
Not a text 10 minutes before recording starts being like, hey, can you record?
Yeah. After having already changed the recording date or time at least once. Yeah. No.
Yeah.
Yep. He's a real one. So, yeah. So great show. Flashback 64. For those who are unfamiliar, it is a chronological Nintendo 64 podcast, but which, I mean, that's enough to like sold. You know what I mean? That's enough right there. But they also are great in terms of like just pop culture, 90s pop culture, and like really they do a lot to sort of set the scene and kind of give you cultural context for the games and things like that. So it's a really great show. Yeah. And Ryan's been on the show a lot of times. This is my first time being on the show, so I was honored to be asked to be on, and it was really great. So yeah, check that out. We will put the links for sure in the show notes to check out that episode. Okay, Ryan, now should we talk about Andor's episode 4 through 6?
I think it's time.
All right, cool. So we're going to stick with our approach that we used last week, which was to just talk about, like, rather than go episode by episode, just talk about the major arcs as they play out across the 3 episodes. So we'll do that again. Yes, Ryan, is that cool? I mean, you look a little surprised. Again, we're not professional. We haven't talked about it ahead of time, but it worked last week, so I figured we'd stick with it.
Yeah, you got a note stock you could share with me?
Yeah, I do have that. Yep, see? Oh my God.
Sweet.
Yeah, it's funny. I worked so hard on this note stock too. I mean, I watched every episode twice. I've spent, hours getting ready for this episode. Didn't think to share the document with the co-host. That is pretty cool. All right, so I've shared it with you.
Great, got it.
Yeah. So episode 4, even though we're going to go through, arc by arc rather than episode by episode, episode 4 is called Ever Been to Ghorman? And so that is where we pick up BBY 3, I believe, right? 3 years before the Battle of Yavin. Last week's episodes were 4 years before the Battle of Yavin. So they've made good on their promise that we'll jump forward 1 year every week for us. Every episode arc, every 3 episodes. So yeah, the episode's called Ever Been to Ghorman? And it opens up again, which I thought this was like a nice sort of parallel form, a nice bit of symmetry. This arc opens up with Bix having a nightmare about Dr. Gorsk again, which is really how last week's arc, it's not how the episode overall opened up, but it's how her component of the episode opened up, and it was early on. So yeah, she's having a nightmare, and it ends up being revealed that what she's, haunted by and what she's having a nightmare about is a soldier that Cassian killed to protect her. And I kind of picked up on that on the second viewing. The first time around, I was like, she killed someone. But I believe actually what happened is Cassian killed someone to protect her, which does make sense, like with the added context of conversations that happen later on in the episode or the arc, and kind of what they're struggling with as a couple. So, yeah, but it's sort of revealed. It's one of those things where when you jump forward a year, every 3 episodes, there's necessarily going to be some plot points that are left off screen that need to kind of be explored, otherwise. And I thought this was a great way to do that.
Yeah. And it fully establishes them as a couple in these early scenes. A few things are established here. Obviously, with that soldier that she's having the nightmare about, we later find out it's because that soldier, this very young soldier, saw her face, and that's why Cassian killed him, which is intense on many levels. And then also this kind of but like really stamps the trauma that Bix is going through, and like that's going to be explored a lot in the next few episodes here. But then when you think about how the final episode wraps up of the 3 and the kind of catharsis of that, it's pretty incredible. And going back and thinking about this opening scene, it makes that all hit a lot harder.
Yeah, absolutely. So I mean, the way this plays out in this first episode is that she's haunted by this vision of Dr. Gorsk and the young soldier who Cassian killed. Cassian tells her that her guilt will fade and that it had to be done. He doesn't tell her that she won't be haunted by it at all anymore, but he's like, it'll fade, which, I mean, we already know that Cassian has sort of he's been there, so to speak. He's been through some stuff. He's had to do some things and see some things, and he's a little bit probably more seasoned as a kind of revolutionary, I guess, than Bix is, at least a little bit. So he's already had to sort of compromise his values, morals, or sort of just be put in a position where he's um, struggling with the guilt of his actions, more so, I guess, than she has. So he tells her that her guilt will fade. He also tells her it had to be done and that you and I are here now because he's gone. Um, and yeah, I mean, I guess the dialogue in the show just continues to be like so good. It is direct and it's efficient, but it's also just so pointed and so poignant. So yeah, just fantastic dialogue. But Bix pushes back and tells him, "You didn't kill that boy because we're at war. You killed him because he saw my face." And yeah, it's kind of setting up the sort of conflict between Bix and Cassian, and also this concern that Cassian is too overprotective, that he's willing to risk it all in some ways, but he loses his nerve when it comes to putting Bix in harm's way, or just really is not willing to sort of let her kind of take some of the same risks that he's willing to take. And that's interesting because they're partners, they're in a relationship, and she has to kind of deal with him going off and being involved in dangerous missions all the time, and it seems like leaving her there in this safe house on Coruscant on her own, and she doesn't know if he's going to come back from those missions, yet he's not really willing to, like, emotionally put it all on the line in that same way. So I don't know. It's just it's certainly kind of an interesting problem to explore, because on the one hand it's like, well, he loves her, he's being overprotective, yes, but the goal is to protect her, right? But then I think too, like when you really kind of analyze the emotions there, it's like, well, he's in some ways not risking as much as she is, even though he's the one who's going off and putting his life on the line maybe more often. But he's not as willing to be, roll the dice, I guess. I don't know how, that's not probably a great way to put it, but like, she has to sit there in that safe house knowing he's off doing some dangerous mission, not knowing if he's going to come back. And he's not really willing, it doesn't seem like, to put himself in that same kind of position, right?
Yeah, and she's also dealing with some pretty intense personal emotional issues that they haven't really unpacked or dealt with as a couple, and we see kind of the ways that she copes with that later throughout the episode.
Yeah. Yeah, and so I mean, there's these interpersonal issues between Bix and Cassian, but then also there's like these trust issues between Cassian and Luthen too, and it's kind of interesting to sort of see those two things paralleled in this arc. Like the kind of trust that he has to place in Bix, and that they have to place in each other, and the I guess faith that they have to have that each of them are going to be okay, while also acknowledging that at some point one of them or both of them are not going to be okay, and that, like, this work that they're doing is essentially like doomed. On a personal level, it's doomed. At some point, it's they're going to have to they're gonna lose at some point, but it's a sacrifice for the greater good and the belief that the rebellion ultimately will be successful. But they don't seem to have any illusions. Really, none of these characters in this show, very few of them anyways, seem to have any illusions that for them personally they're going to have much victory, right? But anyway, so he's got these trust issues, or they have these trust issues between the two of them, which to me seem like they're rooted in a fear of losing the other. I guess they needed Yoda to pop up and just tell them, oh, well, just just train yourself not to be scared of losing someone you love, and then you'll be fine. Um, so there's that, but then, like I said, there's also this kind of trust issue with Cassian and Luthen. Or maybe to reduce it to a trust issue is too simple, but they're having issues with one another as well. And I bring this up because kind of the next thing that happens with the Bix arc is that Luthen shows up to that safe house on Coruscant when Cassian is off planet to Ghorman, which we'll talk about. But he shows up to talk to Bix, and Cassian is not happy about that at all. When he finds out about it later on, what did you make of Luthen's visit to Bix?
Yeah, I mean, Luthen wants Bix as a soldier in this game, and he goes to visit her, and then kind of sees the drugs she's been using, the drops,
Mm-hmm.
and realizes that she's not in a good enough place for high level mission, and he's basically like, you need to get yourself back together, which is easier said than done for someone who was a victim of prolonged intense torture and then a attempted rape.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And this is another place where the way the show is structured and the ideas that are sort of being explored thematically, where it's just so well done and so smart, is like we also kind of have this storyline going on, which we'll talk about more in depth, but we have the storyline going on with Cinta and Vale as well, and one of the comments that they make to one another is that, like, we're worth more to him separately than we are together. And Cassian brings this up when he storms in to Luthen's place, after Luthen visits Bix, and Cassian finds out about it. He shows up there, and of course Luthen is mega pissed and is like, like, you're risking everything by being here right now. You could, like, destroy all the work we're doing because you're breaking every rule that we live by. But anyway, like, it's that same idea. Luthen is like, okay, well, yeah, Bix is a valuable soldier. Cassian is a valuable soldier, but he doesn't care about their happiness. He doesn't care about
Mm-hmm.
them being gratified by the relationship with one another. In fact, he'd kind of prefer. And Cassian accuses him of this when he goes to barge in on him, but he'd prefer that they were separate, or that they weren't together, that they didn't have that happiness, because he just wants to use them as tools, and they're more valuable tools when they are alone than they are as a couple.
Yeah, I mean, and there's like a brilliant parallel here to the Jedi story as well, of how Jedi are taught to not have attachment, and we've seen in Star Wars, especially in the prequel era, like, how attachment can compromise literally the fate of the galaxy.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, so it's interesting that that's explored in a, like, non religious coda sort of way, but as like, very pragmatic, because, like, Luthen doesn't want Bix and Andor to have that attachment in that relationship. He doesn't want Cinta and Vel to have that attachment and relationship. Yeah, it's a very interesting theme and through line here.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And it's like pragmatic, but it's also like it's its own kind of dogma almost, you know. I was
Mm-hmm.
thinking like it's dogmatic too because it's like no, this is the way a revolutionary operates. This is the way a revolutionary, lives. Like you don't care about anyone else. You can't let yourself care about anyone else. You have to be
Mm-hmm.
detached or whatever. And so yeah, it is interesting to kind of compare that to the Jedi way or whatever the Jedi beliefs and the Jedi dogma because it's its own sort of dogma too, and it's kind of the same idea, but the way the Jedi present it is sort of wrapped up like transparently or sort of directly in the dogma, and the
Mm-hmm.
way Luthen presents it is more like ruthless, right? The Jedi don't try to be ruthless as they talk about it. They're not like you're an idiot if or not. I mean, they don't berate you necessarily for for
Mm-hmm.
like wanting to have attachments, but they sort of just do this sort of enlightened kind of like. But our teachings elevate us above that sort of philosophy, whereas
Yeah.
Luthen would be more like, jackass, you're risking everything. You know what I mean? Sort of is like his
Mm-hmm.
mentality towards it. Um,
Yeah.
yeah. And there's great dialogue like in those sequences too. Like in the next episode, I Have Friends Everywhere, episode 5, when Luthen and Bix are talking. Like when she's talking about the drugs that she's using, and there's probably a space, a name for that space drug that I'm not sure of, but um, you know, she asks him like, "It never ends, does it?" And he says, "It will. We'll either bring them down or die trying. What else is there?" And
Mm-hmm.
that's his philosophy, right? That's his like credo that
Mm-hmm.
he lives by. Um, but like specifically talking about the drug, she says, "I use it for sleep," and Luthen responds, "It works for a while, but the dreams come back worse when you stop. Be careful." Um, and yeah, just compelling stuff because like here we are
Mm-hmm.
talking about Luthen's dogma and his steadfast belief in like he's willing to in season 1 he sacrifices I forget the name of the the part. He's not a partisan, but he's working with Saw Gerrera, that crew. Like he sacrifices that crew. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, and
The big guy. Yeah.
yeah, I forget his name now. Even though I just
Yeah.
watched the episode a week or two ago,
Yeah.
but anyway, he's willing to do those things, but he's pretty ruthless, and yet like there's just that hint that he himself struggled with a lot of these same sort of feelings of guilt and
Mm-hmm.
and things that people like Cassian and Bix are dealing with now.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's bring this Bix storyline home and talk about the way it kind of concludes in the 6th episode. Um, Cassian, does confront Luthen, like we talked about. Cassian's whole like, and we haven't talked about him going to Ghorman, but when he talks to Luthen about it, he's like, what they're planning isn't worth it. It doesn't make any sense. Like it's not going to work. It's a wait. They're just gonna they're gonna destroy themselves. Basically, he asked Luthen, "What if it goes up in flames?" And Luthen's response is, "Then it will burn very brightly."
Mm-hmm.
Which, yeah, to me, it just like
So
it.
good.
It's, I mean, again, yeah, it's that great writing, that great dialogue that the show is known for, but also, really recalls the way he is willing to sacrifice whoever he's got to sacrifice, and not just Imperial people or bad guys or whatever. He's willing to sacrifice, people on his side, people who hate the Empire as much as he does. Like, he's willing to do that, and this is during an arc or in an arc when Partagaz and Dedra and Krennic are doing the exact same thing. So speaking of parallels, right, and that sort of
Mm-hmm.
thematic through line, you're seeing the Empire doing the same thing, right? Um, Luthen is less like specifically. I don't know if he's necessarily like encouraging the Ghorman Front to do this because he thinks it's going to fail, but he certainly doesn't seem concerned about if it will or won't, which is where Cassian, at this point still has a lot more humanity, I guess, than Luthen does, right? Because he
Yeah.
hates the
Well,
idea.
yeah, it's so interesting that it does seem like a kind of flawed and futile plan for with a lot of risk and very little reward, but it just seems like Luthen is like, if they have the spirit, then they should just go for it. Like, we should be encouraging this everywhere. You know, any damage we can do is worth doing, no matter what the costs.
Yeah. Yeah, and encourage it everywhere. And if it's messy and a lot of people die, then other revolutionaries in other parts of the galaxy are going to see that, and they're going to get that much more angry at the Empire. So there's the cliche about, can't make an omelet without cracking a few eggs, and Luthen certainly seems to subscribe to that, right?
Yeah. Many eggs are cracked.
Yeah.
In this show.
Yeah. So yeah, it's tough to, I guess, kind of keep these plot lines separated super cleanly, but more on Cassian and Ghorman in a minute. But like, when Cassian shows up to talk to Luthen about this, and they're having that conversation about if it goes up in flames and all that kind of stuff, right? Luthen tells him, this is the second time today that you've let me down. And then, he says, now you both have, about him and Bix, right? Which, I mean, yeah, because he showed up and Bix was high and out of her mind, and he knew it, right? So they're both letting him down, but what's so good is as Cassian telling Luthen, I give you everything, and Luthen's response is so savage. This is everything, soft on Ghorman but willing to protect Bix at any cost. Like, it's so brutal and savage, and the way he mocks what Cassian said to him at the end of episode 1. Take me in or kill me. He's like, take me in or kill me. He's basically totally, yeah, he's totally mocking one of Cassian's most vulnerable moments. So, but at the same time, like, he's not wrong, is he? At least from his point of view, his perspective, he's not wrong. Like, Cassian does probably need to be willing to. It's not everything anyways, right? He's like, I give you everything. Well, no, that's not everything, right? Because he's definitely holding back in a way. So, yeah, great stuff. And then, like, maybe the best moment, I guess depending on how you look at it, but maybe the best moment of the whole arc are the final moments of Bix's kind of storyline in this arc. She shows up to Dr. Gorst's office, I guess, or torture chamber or whatever it is. When he walks through the door, she's waiting there, and I thought it was such a nice touch that he doesn't even know who she, like, he knows that he should know who she is, but he's like, I know you, right? Who are you? Like, the man who ruined her life, right? Like, or came real close to ruining her life, and is the second male character in season 2 of Andor who has, essentially ruined her life, who she pays back for that. Barely knows who she is, like that impersonal sort of, it really, I mean, it dehumanizes him. If you're wondering if Dr. Gorst is evil or what, because he's got this sort of like creepy, kind bedside manner almost when he's torturing you. Oh, it won't hurt, and like, he's just got that. So yeah, for him to like have spent days just ruining her and be like, who are you again? Because I feel like I know you, is, if you needed a reason to hate him, or if you weren't sure, like, is he all bad? Like, he's just a deplorable person, I feel,
Yeah. And I mean, it just goes to show he must have done this so many times that he can't even, keep his quote unquote patience straight. Yep.
Yeah. So Bix is like, well, I'm going to handcuff you to the chair. I'm going to gag you. I'm going to put those headphones on you. I'm going to turn that shit all the way up. And then as she's leaving the room, she tells him it will only feel like forever. Which is great. And as she's walking out, she is she's met by Cassian, and they walk out together in step, and sort of like triumphantly lift their arms up and set off those charges. and blow the place up. So it's a little bit of a fist pumping kind of moment, right?
Yeah, yeah, and it's funny too because like after she like did that and like walked away, I was like, oh no, like someone's just gonna go in there and find him, like, and then like set him free. Like
Yeah.
that's not a good idea. And then then they go and we saw this shot in the trailer,
Yeah.
um, the last trailer, but we didn't have the context for it, and I was like, okay, yeah. So they did blow him up.
Yeah. And I mean, like, um, the sort of storyline with him in this arc, and I guess in this season, is the idea that like the Emperor finds out about him or learns more about him and is convinced by another, sort of department of the Empire or whatever, that he's too valuable. Like his torture methods are so
Mm-hmm.
effective that he can't just be the ISB just can't keep him all for themselves, right? But she blows that place up, and so I mean, if you want to get really logical about it, it's like, well, whatever files he has, sound files that he uses to torture people and all that stuff, like you'd think they're in Google Drive or something, right? They're in the cloud, right, or whatever. But
Mm-hmm.
I feel like I don't know, the way I'm interpreting it is like not only does she kill him, but she ends his work too. Like they're blowing up his little torture chamber with his equipment in it that has his recordings on it and all that. It's like, because when they're talking about it earlier, it's not like they're like, oh, cool, Dr. Gorst, he's really good. Let's have him send his wave files to other people who can use them to torture.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, no, we need Dr. Gorst. He's the one who knows how to use these audio files to like really torture people. And so I think she ends him and she ends his whole like torture program, is sort of how I interpreted that.
Yeah, I mean it's hard to say if that does in the program or if they, have if the Empire had already started the work in, you know, preparing the professional development for the future torturers or everything, like how
Yeah.
much of the equipment and the files are there, how much of his knowledge do they have, etc. But um, I think it's fine to leave that a bit ambiguous, and either we'll see it again or we won't.
Yeah. Yeah, but yeah, right, right. But I think it's like it's an emotional, obviously a
Mm-hmm.
major emotional victory for Bix,
Yeah.
and Cassian, but for Bix especially. And
Mm-hmm.
last thing about it, I feel like this shot really intentionally mirrors those final shots, those final moments of episode 3 of season 1, where Cassian is sort of walking down the street in Ferrix and the drums are kicking in. And I remember being like, oh, holy, like this is freaking awesome. And it's like, you just feel this like major sort of like inspiration or just like this feeling of excitement. And just like this person is becoming like Cassian is like on his way, right, to becoming,
Mm-hmm.
who we want him to be or whatever. And it's sort of perverse or a little bit dark, but I feel like we have the same kind of feeling here because in episode 3 of season 2 she blasts that rapist, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then here she's sort of like finally kind of taking control of her trauma and the torture she's
Mm-hmm.
been put through. And but there's it is, I think it's a victory. It's an emotional victory for her, and for us as an audience, it's a victory too. Like it's like we're happy to see her have her retribution to put an end to this guy, etc. But also like she's headed down potentially sort of a dark path here too. Like as she's walking out, she just totally like blasts that officer like in cold blood, like or not. I
Mm-hmm.
don't know, not in cold blood. I mean, he sees it coming, but she just totally takes him out, without like a thought. And it's just one sort of soldier or officer or whatever she kills, but like she's sort of a killing machine in these last couple moments. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and her arc in this block of episodes opens up with her being haunted by the face of one person who died because of her, and now she's like, just watch me go. You know what I mean? I'm just going to take these people out. So, it's who she probably needs to be in terms of this work for Luthen and the rebellion, but it's a little dark as well, I think.
Yeah, but I think she also knows. I mean, this is what I said the same thing in the last episode where she, or in the last set of episodes where she shot that other soldier of the Empire outside of the house after he's like, the guy's dead, just come out, and she shoots him.
Mm.
Um, but I think it's like she is not. What is she going to do? Allow herself to be captured and violated again? Like, it's either she kills these people or the same things happen to her again. I think
Yeah,
that's kind of where her head is at, and yeah, it's tough to argue with that.
yeah. And like, dude, I mean, the rapist, like, yeah, she needed to kill that guy, right? And that guy was going to kill her, by the or well, and that guy died because of his own actions, right?
Mm-hmm.
And she messed him up twice by striking him in the head with that like major that wrench or whatever it was. But that's his own fault. And then I think the killing blow is when he stumbles out and hits his own head on that box or whatever. So she didn't kill him, but like that Imperial officer who is an enabler, who was going to sit in that car while
Mm-hmm.
I mean, like he had it coming, if you want to put it that way, right? And also he was
Mm-hmm.
going to shoot at her anyways, like they were going to kill her. So yeah, she has to do it. But I think what I'm talking about is more like the um the sort of coldness that she doesn't even have, like not in episode 3 of season 2, in episode 6 of season 2. You know what I mean? There is
Mm-hmm.
there's like a machine like quality to what she's doing. And I just think, like, especially with um how targeted or how just like carefully these like ideas are put together in these shows, like I think opening episode 4 with her being haunted by the death of a bad guy who had, like, Cassian explicitly says, we're here because he's not here anymore. That's the only reason we're still here. Like, it is do or die. That guy,
Mm-hmm.
if we didn't kill him, if I didn't kill him, we're dead now. Like, that's made clear, and yet she's still haunted by it. But by the end of episode 6, like, she is like has embraced that. So I think it's necessary, and I'm not saying, like, that those guys don't deserve it, that they do, but also I guess I'm curious to see, where does Bix go from here? Does she continue, like, is she empowered by this? Is it like, a year later, is she in control of her emotions and feeling like she's overcome all this, or is she losing herself more and more in terms of like rage? And I don't know, like it'll be interesting to see kind of what happens, because in one way it's like this arc is very complete from episode 1 of season 2 to episode 6 now with
Mm-hmm.
Bix. Like
Mm-hmm.
like I said, it's like Cassian. It's like that moment where Cassian's like walking with the drums coming in that first season. But on the other hand, I'm like, okay, well, where will they go with Bix? And will we ultimately look back at this and be like, this was a moment that set her down a path that's, the right one for her to go down, or not? I don't know.
Yeah, and I think we haven't gotten to it yet, but I think it'll be interesting to compare and contrast Bix's path in the next few episodes with Val's
Yeah,
as well.
yeah, yeah.
One last thing I do want to say about this final scene is that I think it was also a really good conclusion to some of the conflict between Cassian and Bix, and then Cassian, Bix, and Luthen, because this showed the two of them being powerful together.
Mm. Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
And Bix was the one who was actually sent in to do the job,
yes,
and
yes.
Cassian was like a support person to her.
Yeah, he's not trying to like protect her with kid gloves anymore or whatever, right? He's like letting
Yeah.
her kind of, yeah. Yeah. No, great point. Great point. Okay, well let's talk Gorman now, I guess, right? I
Okay.
believe the planet's called Gorman. Um,
Yes.
yeah, so Cassian is going to be sent there and be doing some undercover work there, kind of talking to the Ghorman Front. But actually, when we first are kind of brought to Ghorman, the first thing we're seeing is that this is where Cyril is now living his life a year after the previous set of episodes. And I thought it was really intriguing and sort of disorienting in a good way, the way all of this stuff with Cyril was introduced, because what I thought I was seeing wasn't exactly what I was seeing by the time, we get through these episodes, right? Or even through kind of the first episode. But, it seems like Cyril has been demoted, maybe. His mom's kind of giving him shit because it's like, no, you're not on Coruscant anymore. They stuck you in a field office, like in the middle of nowhere, whatever. And he's like, I'm in charge here. Like, what are you talking about? Like, this is good. And well, Uncle Harlow doesn't think it's good, and whatever, right? So it's like,
Mm-hmm.
you just feel like, okay, well, I guess he's a little bit back to, sulking at the breakfast table while his mom's telling him what a failure he is. Um, until, it's revealed that in fact he's like basically on an ISB mission working undercover for the ISB to sort of, infiltrate the Ghorman Front and encourage them to I forget how Dedra put it in the previous arc, but mess up in a way that's going to work out well for the Empire, right? So he's there to do that, but you don't know it right away, and
Mm-hmm.
so you kind of learn as it plays out, and it's like, oh God, this is so good. Um, yeah.
Yeah. There's the layers here,
Mm-hmm.
like because you have him like on. It almost seems like he's making like a baby face turn here. He's getting berated by his mom, and he's like, you're listening to too many Empire Hollows. Like these are good people here. Like
Mm-hmm.
all this stuff. Like you don't know. I'm proud of the work I'm doing here, and then it seems like he's gotten dumped, and he's single. But then as this is all kind of revealed, we learn more and more about what's actually happening, which is just really fascinating.
Yeah. Yeah. It is. It's like a spy plot and an espionage plot and sort of an undercover plot. And like, I gotta be honest, like I was getting confused at times, like watching it the first time through,
Mm-hmm.
and even like after having watched it twice, it's like you have to sort of like orient yourself, like, okay, now wait, why is like what is this person really after? Because the Gorman Front is like they think they're stringing him along while he's actually stringing them along, and he thinks that he's like in lockstep with ISB, but really the ISB is sort of, including his own girlfriend, is basically stringing him along, right? Like he can't know what he's really doing there. So yeah, it's just like these layers of deception.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Um, I love the sort of world building as far as Gorman is concerned, with like talking about the Tarkin massacre and the memorial that's put
Yeah.
up there, and I guess that's an EU thing, the Tarkin massacre. Like that was something
Mm-hmm.
from way back when.
From
Uh,
the the Weston Games. We talked a little bit about this.
yeah.
The Weston Games RPG from back in the day. But the actual like what it is
Mm-hmm.
like horrifying. Like there were people protesting in this square, and where um and like Tarkin just landed a ship on top of them
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
just and killed 500 people who were protesting.
Yep. Yep.
And
Yep.
I mean, I think that's just one of those things that, you know, in, obviously this show was written and shot months, years ago. But it feels so like close to home as we have like nationwide protests happening in this country every weekend.
Mm.
And thinking about like who are the people at protests. Like my mom went to a protest today. Like, and it's not just these like violent revolutionaries like you and your family went recently, and
Yeah.
like yeah, it's just like these average people, and then you think of like the empire just choosing to just wipe them all out in like a horrific fashion.
Yeah. 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 Absolutely. Yeah. So, um, and two, the way the show kind of like really communicates the personal costs of this, or the personal sort of like pain of this, with the bellboy
Mm-hmm.
who shares his story. And yeah, it gives us a chance to see Cassian being pretty, sort of smooth undercover, and kind of coming off as like, oh, I'm just this designer or whatever, but like really kind of pumping this
Mm-hmm.
guy for information. But also, for us, we're learning about the personal pain of the Empire's actions. And so yeah, there's the monument there in the center of town, and they're of course building their armory, in a way that it will cast a shadow over that, which they agreed they wouldn't do, and that's what they're doing. One interesting thing about that is that the armory, quote unquote, that they're building, at least I think that's what this kind of structure is, but it's shaped very much like the Death Star. So that is continuing to be something that's just like a constant in the show, is this Death
Mm-hmm.
Star motif, like things that are shaped and look like the Death Star, sort of, kind of just like hanging over everything that's happening, looming over everything is this Death Star. I think it's really great. In Luthen's, or I guess it's Davos Skolden's sort of gallery or whatever, that room that they're in, later on, there's a piece that's looks like the Death Star 2 from Return of the Jedi. It's like, it's a circle, a globe or whatever, but it's like incomplete, and the scaffolding or whatever, it just looks very much like that. So that is becoming, I won't say like obvious, like it's like overkill, but that is becoming like extremely evident that they are sort of placing the Death Star all over, visually in this show, and I love it. So
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
yeah. But yeah, so I guess like, in the next episode, or as that kind of storyline um, continues, we see Cyril back on Coruscant, and he arrives at Dedra's apartment. I don't know if it's their apartment or her apartment or what,
Uh-huh.
but it's quite a scene. Quite a scene.
Mm-hmm.
He is told he's allowed to be there for 1 hour only. This is after being away probably for like a year, not seeing her. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and she is so stoic. She's just so like emotionless in the way she interacts with him. Um, I don't know. It's wild, because he is like very dramatic, not very dramatic, but he's like kind of dramatic. He's like much more vulnerable, like naked emotions, like what he's thinking and feeling, and he
Mm-hmm.
allows himself to become upset, and he allows himself to express emotion, like usually it's like losing control of himself, like getting angry and whatever. But like in this moment, it's clear, like he's like, are you for real? Like, we're like, you and I are only going to be allowed to be together for an hour right now. And like she's just like, yeah, that's the business, guy. You know what I mean? Like
Mm-hmm.
she's so bottled up, and it's like, how does she feel about that? Does she miss him? Is she at all like upset that she's only going to get to see him for an hour? Like, I think she is, but she does not express that. I think her demand that he turn out the lights is the closest we're going to
Oh
come to
man.
her expressing any kind of warmth, or any kind of like, yes, I did miss you, I do miss you, whatever. But like,
Mm-hmm.
uh yeah, pretty good stuff.
And all everything is left to our imaginations from that
Yes.
scene.
Yeah.
And I was honestly not sure. I was like, how long are they going to keep the camera here? And turns
Yeah.
out not very long at all. But um again, an interesting, way to contrast their relationship with the other relationships in the show, with um, Cassian and Bix, and with Val and Cinta.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And when you have Luthen, being like, you have to, set that stuff aside. The mission comes first, all this, and then you have, like, one person in the relationship also saying that, and the other person not, and it creates like this, level of like confusion and awkwardness. Whereas here with Dedra, she's just like, no, this is how it is.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Yeah, 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 and more on Cinta and Val here in a minute. But Cyril has a dalliance with Dedra there, a brief interlude with Dedra at her apartment. Then he visits his mom. She continues to be fantastic, I think.
Yep.
She's just, oh my God, she is cutting a promo on him. It's so passive aggressive. The silence, the brooding, it's almost like having you here, is what she tells him.
Comparing him to the spider.
Yeah, 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 to the spider, yeah, the toy spider he brings for her. And then Cyril, Dedra, and Partagaz are featured in the ISB office, and they're discussing the plan. Cyril's getting a little bit emotional. He's not exactly following the ISB protocol of being cold and calculated and everything else, but he tells Partagaz the plan, your plan to bait Ghorman as a prize for outside agitators, needs to begin somewhere. This could be that moment. And Partagaz seems like impressed by Cyril. He tells him that he's impressed by him, and he kind of does, like, his reactions are like, oh well, yeah, that sounds pretty good. That's pretty interesting. But that by the end of this arc, that the whole thing is like, we just have to make him think we're super impressed with him because we can't let him know what's really going on. So it's like, Cyril does seem to be doing a pretty decent job, but he doesn't know what the job is that he's doing, right? So they need him to be almost like overly enthusiastic because they want these, the Partigan, or the not the Partigan, the Ghorman Front to be, excited about carrying out their little rebellion or whatever. So yeah, it's just interesting because it's like that they, on the surface, they're telling him, oh my God, you're doing such a good job, Cyril, and he is so excited about it, but we know that really they're playing him too, so I feel almost bad for Cyril, even though he's a Nazi. I feel almost bad for Cyril. Like when Partagaz leaves the room and he's like, if I say this is the greatest day of my life, does it spoil everything? And his girlfriend has to, like, try not to puke and be like, it's good to see you happy. But yeah. That's not a turn on for Dedra when Cyril's like, oh my God, I'm so happy that, like, Partagaz gave me a compliment. Like, that's not like that's not going to do anything for her. You know what I mean?
No, definitely not.
It's pretty embarrassing. It's pretty embarrassing. Yeah. So, yeah. And then I think that's about it for Cyril, because, like, he's involved in the kind of Ghorman sequence, but we'll kind of talk about that separately. So, I think that does it for Cyril. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Dedra's, storyline and Partagaz is pretty connected to Cyril. Cyril's kind of the lead player on that, I would say. Mm-hmm. So really what that kind of leaves us with here is the Ghorman Front and Cassian and Val and Cinta, and then, we'll talk a little bit about D'Qar too. But let's just talk about, I guess, this Ghorman Front group and their mission and all of that. Then we'll kind of wrap up with D'Qar. But yeah. What did you think about the Ghorman Front, kind of like those characters, them as a group? We kind of came off of a somewhat controversial group of new sort of not like more minor characters in the last arc.
Yeah.
So how'd you feel about this group?
I I thought they were great.
Okay.
I I love this whole like French vibe
Yeah.
of everything. You know, French, Italian, you know, from the architecture of Gorman and just the vibe of the place, and then to have these, um, you know, La Resistance uh, down in the depths, hatching out this plan, and then you know it's the way this show explores the different revolutionary groups is just it's so interesting. Um, and you know, I mean, this all started back with Rogue One, and like seeing these, you know, these splinter factions, and you know, Saw Gerrera and his partisans, and everything. And yeah, and you know, you see a lot of differences between the groups, but then also like a lot of similarities of like, you know, who are the people with the potential love interests, and who are the, you know, the more thoughtful people, who are the more people who are just like ready to just jump in, who are the people who follow the protocols, who doesn't. And yeah, I think it's like a really interesting thing that they're exploring. There's like a family dynamic here,
Mm-hmm.
with the woman and her father. There's, you know, differing opinions and bickering between the members of the group. And yeah, I mean, it's, again, it's like, it's really interesting to see this, what this looks like in the context of Star Wars, but then also, again, just like all of the parallels to our world, and you know, political groups here.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, because you literally see it on Blue Sky every day.
Right, sure. Yeah. And I'm excited to see kind of like I think we'll come back to these characters in the next arc or in the last arc because Gorman is going to, continue to be an important location.
Mhm.
So but yeah, they're really like I really like them too. I find them very admirable. They're obviously very earnest and really believe in what they're doing, and they don't have
Mhm.
anywhere near like the knowledge or expertise that like Cassian even at this point has, but that Luthen has, right? So they don't have like really the understanding of how to do this revolutionary work, this rebellious work that somebody like Luthen or Cassian do, but they believe in it so much, and they're just like, we have to do
Mhm.
something, So that's like pretty admirable. Cassian meets with them and tells them like, look, you'll be living at the scene of the crime, and worse than that, you're planning on advertising what you've done. Like this is not smart. Don't do this. Um, Rylands, I think is the father's name. He says, "Not much of a revolutionary, are you?" He walks away. Then he comes back to tell Cassian and tell your friend, "I'm not impressed." So
Mhm.
he's just like, dude, I thought you were coming to help us, and you're just. But Cassian is right, right? I think Cassian is right, obviously, um, because he doesn't want to see these people, um, sort of like start their work too early and end up being sacrificed or going up in flames. Luthen, on the other hand, is happy to do that. So,
Mhm.
um, and in doing so, he sends Vale there in Cassian's place. So we wanted Cassian to kind of lead this. Cassian is unwilling to do it, and so he sends Vale there instead. And Vale is going to work with Cinta, which I have to tell you, I mean, you probably, as you were watching, as soon as you saw Cinta and Val together, knew basically where this was all headed. Somehow, I really like wasn't thinking about it,
Mm.
and the conversation they kind of have two tender conversations, one in a cafe and one in a sort of like love scene between the two of them, where Cinta is like. she's apologizing for some of her behavior in the past. She's apologizing for being absent. She says she's had an accident, and she told Luthen, not to tell Val about it. And I mean, there's a line where she's talking about that, where she says, Val's like, what happened? And she's like, I'll tell you about it someday. In retrospect, that's about the most obvious, like, that's like a big sign pointing to Cinta saying she's never going to tell her about it. Like, you know what I mean? Like that's a pretty big tell that Cinta wasn't going to make it out of that episode, or out of that arc. And I missed it. I wasn't. And I think, that's a pretty good sign of how invested and just like how well written it is. It doesn't feel like the obvious, like, oh, well, the person walked in the room and said goodbye, it was nice to see you again, like the thing that it's usually so obvious in shows. And I think it is pretty obvious here in retrospect that for whatever reason I missed it. And I'm like, I guess I'm praising that because I'm saying like the signs were so clear, and yet I was like so wrapped up in the story that I didn't even see them.
Yeah, well, they don't do a lot to set up Cinta's death. Like, it happens. I mean, it happens off screen, and they don't like really build up to it. So it is easy to not have that top of mind. But in retrospect, that line you just mentioned, and then the love scene, kind of makes sense. But it is, it's nice that they were able to have those final moments together.
Yeah.
But yeah, we all knew this show is not going to end well for characters, and they're certainly not going to save it for just the last episode.
Yeah, well, and I really respect like you kind of were describing it a minute ago, but like nothing really big happens, and in fact it's like a stupid accident that shouldn't have happened. The accident happens basically because of a disagreement between two people who are on the same page and wanting to fight the Empire, but they can't agree on how to do it, and she's the casualty of that. So like I think it's ultimately it's especially for a show like Andor, it's the right way to kind of do this, rather than having like Cinta swinging on some rope across a chasm and taking out 20 stormtroopers and then being killed in the, what I mean? It's like, no, this feels real, you know what I mean? And it's senseless and accidental and stupid, and those kind of mistakes are being made, and it does it does sort of justify is not the right word. What am I? It proves Cassian right. He's like, they're not ready for this, and I think that was borne out to be accurate, because Cinta's dead here. Go ahead.
Yeah. Again, this kind of reminds us of the stakes of what's happening in the show. It's also, frustratingly preventable because you had Vale and Cinta in the meeting before this say, we are the only people who will have guns.
Yeah.
Do not bring a gun.
Yeah, that was another. Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
This is why. And yeah, it really just kind of, again, shows the inexperience of these groups, and how just one person's mistake the consequences of that. And then I think going back to what we were talking about earlier, like you just said, like Cassian is right that they weren't ready, and there are people on this team who were not mature enough, and Luthen is also right, because essentially they got the job done.
Yeah.
And he expected casualties.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, 100%. Yeah, for sure. Another thing that's really great about it is that, and again, like just the, I don't know how you put it, like how tight these scripts are, how well structured and constructed these scripts are. Um, again, we open this arc with Bix like haunted by the death of one person, because she views it as her fault or whatever. And when Cinta dies, when they're on that transport afterwards, Sam is the name of the character who was, had the blaster and pointed it at his friend or whatever, and is responsible for this. And he's crying, because like he's horrified by this. And so
Mm-hmm.
it's not like, oh, whoops, we killed someone and it's just Vale's crying because it's my girlfriend who died. It's like the person who did this is like destroyed, by that.
Mm-hmm.
And then, of course, again with the writing, like Vale gets some incredible lines to deliver there. She tells Sam, "This is like skin. You're taking this with you wherever you go for the rest of your worthless life." And says that Cinta was a warrior. She was everything you've daydreamed about. She was a miracle. And you, to die like this because of you, some whining, simpering, childish fool, don't you dare cry. You'll make up for this forever. Good stuff.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Powerful stuff. Yeah. Um, okay. Ryan, I forgot, we haven't talked about Clea and the microphone that she needs to remove from Skulden's gallery or whatever it is. So tense. The scene is so tense. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and again, the cross cutting, like they are really, they're killing it with the cross cutting in the third episodes of these arcs. With Mon Mothma dancing, to Bix being attacked, to Cassian taking out the Imperials and the TIE fighter, like cross cutting between those in the third episode. And then here in
Mm-hmm.
the sixth, cross cutting between what's going on Ghorman and the tension um, of Clea, hopefully getting that microphone removed while Skulden, but more importantly, Krennic are there in the room. She has to do this undercover
Mm-hmm.
using Lonnie to to block their view.
Mm-hmm.
It's so difficult that her hand is bleeding as she's twisting this thing so hard that there's blood pouring out of her, down her wrist. Oh my god, it's so good. It's so intense. Um,
Yeah, and then you have Mon and Krennic in their like war of words that is
mm-hmm.
happening here, that is just incredible, and but also like very tense, because like there's definitely a point where like I was starting to get a little concerned for Mon at this point, where she was just saying things, and obviously we know how their fates all shake out, but yeah, Clea just one of I was texting you about this the other week, that she's just, I feel like, kind of an underrated character on this show, because I mean, there's so many strong characters. Like every character is great on this show. But yeah, I feel like, she doesn't quite get talked about, but she is such a impassioned and commanding presence, and you know the thoughtfulness in her work and her interactions, and just like the actor's portrayal is just so good. So it was cool to kind of see her have this quote unquote action scene um, in here, and yeah, just
Yeah,
incredible stuff.
yeah. I was reading an interview with Tony Gilroy recently where he was talking about the actor who plays Clea, and I'm sorry I don't have her name pulled up right now, but that they just were like, she's so good as an actor. He said the same thing actually about the actor who plays Williman too, but was like, she's so good on season one that they were like, we like we're going to just write, like, we're going to go, like, basically we can't wait to write for her for season 2 and really write like a lot of good stuff for her because we know she's gonna be great. He's like, you can't find a bad piece of footage of her from season 1. Like, there's nothing in a vault anywhere.
No.
There's no bad, but not even what you see on screen as an audience. He's saying, like,
Yeah.
there's no wasted takes, there's no flubbed lines, there's no, like, she's perfect. Like, he was just talking about how great she is.
Wow.
So yeah, and I think yeah, it's there, certainly there on screen. So she's great. The stuff with Krennic and Mon Mothma is, like, yeah, so good. She tells him, how pleasant to see you free of the witness stand. That's like her opening salvo against him. Like, it's some good stuff. Yeah. So to see their barely disguised disdain for one another is really great. I think it was interesting to sort of see Davos Skolden and his wife kind of looking on, because they're sort of married into Mon Mothma's family, right? Like, are they're I don't, what do you call it? Like, when, the in-laws, right? The in-laws, like, they're family to a certain extent. And they're watching this going like, whoa, what is Mon Mothma? Like, she is, like, straight up going toe to toe with this big time Imperial hotshot. Like, who is our, like, who is our daughter-in-law's mom? Like, what is she? You know what I mean? What is she doing? So I thought that was good. And I'm curious to see, like, I feel like Dabo will have some kind of, role in, I don't know, something bad with how things shake out for Mon Mothma going forward. I'm really happy to see that he continues to be a part of the show, because I thought he was a great character. And now that poor Take Holma is out of the picture, it's I'm glad that part of it is still there with Skolden, Dabo Skolden. And then also, too, real quick, Ryan, we didn't talk about the fact that Bail Organa shows up in this episode. Recast, unfortunately. Although I will say that I think that the actor Benjamin Bratt that they cast to play Bail is a pretty good recast. I thought he was... I like him. Like, he's one of those faces where you're like, I've seen you in so many things, but I can't name too many of them. I looked him up. Like, I've definitely seen some of the movies he's been in, but I guess also he was in Law and Order for a while, and that's pretty tough to escape in America in terms of, like, if you own a television, like, it's all over the place, right? So I've seen him for sure in that. I don't watch Law and Order, although if I did, I'd be proud to declare it. But I don't really watch Law and Order, but like I said, you see it, right? Like, whether you're choosing to or not, you see Law and Order
Yes.
if you have a TV around ever. So, but yeah, I feel like visually, it works fairly well. And I just thought, he only had a few lines, but so far, but I thought he was good.
Yeah, I don't quite know how I feel about this. It's really going to hinge on if we see him again, because like, okay, if you, like, yeah, it makes sense why you would want to have Bail Organa in this show. Like, yep, that makes sense. But if, for whatever reason you can't or don't want to get Jimmy Smits, then I think you have to kind of consider, like, does Bail play enough of a role that it's essential that we recast here? And from what we just saw here, I don't think it quite passes the test, where it does feel more like an Easter egg of sorts. But if he's going to play a bigger role and, like, you absolutely can't get Jimmy Smits, then yeah, like, recast.
I read this scene as the only reason this scene exists is because because they are going to use Bail later on, and because they can't get Jimmy Smits. And so they need to have this scene, this, like, not to be flippant, but like a throwaway scene where we go, oh, that's Bail Organa now. So that when he has a more important moment in a later episode, we're not trying to process, like, wait, why is that not the same guy? Like, we've gotten that out of the way now. I think that's the purpose of it. And even the dialogue, I mean, the dialogue is fine, but like it's not to the level of a lot of dialogue in Andor, because I think it was so just like, oh, I'm like, I don't have the lines written down here, but there were
Yeah.
like things he said that were clearly like, you're saying that to them so that we, the audience, hear that you're Bail Organa. You wouldn't actually say
Mm-hmm.
that to these people in this moment. You know what I mean? It's very expository,
Mm-hmm.
very like, yeah. And it's fine. It was totally, it wasn't bad, but it was just like,
Yeah.
when that scene was over, I was like, they just want me to know that this guy's playing Bail Organa now. Put that in my
Yeah.
back pocket for later on, you know? So,
Yeah.
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 Yeah. All right. To wrap up here, let's talk about the Dakar kind of stuff with Will and Saw Gerrera. Saw Gerrera is a slippery one. I'm always a little confused about what he's trying to do or trying to accomplish. um, but
Yeah.
so after the first arc, it turns out Will is, for whatever reason, kind of sent to work with Saw. I'm sure by Luthen, um,
Mm-hmm.
and he's has to train another soldier, and he's got to show him how to do, I forget, something to do with a pipeline. They have to divert a pipeline or something, but it's this intricate kind of process, and if you don't do it correctly, then I think the rhydonium gas will be released, or I'm not sure what'll happen. It'll blow up, bad things will
Mm-hmm.
happen. So there's all this pressure, and he's got to teach this other guy how to do it. But like, long story short, by the end of the fifth episode, I think it was in the fifth episode, maybe it was I don't, but anyway, by the end of this arc, this storyline, it turns out that the guy he was training is actually a spy for the Empire. Saw shoots him in the head and kills him.
Mm-hmm.
All the while, like, testing Will, because he's basically pointing the gun at Will. And anyway, he puts his hand on Will's shoulder and is like, "It's on you, boy." So yeah, so he he's with Saw now. He's got to do it, and then the final sort of scene with Will and Saw, Will is actually doing the work with the pipeline, but while he's doing it, Saw is telling this story of being in this work camp in Onderon, and it's intense. Ryan, your face is telling me that you found this scene pretty effective.
It's it's incredible.
Hmm.
Like, um, yeah, it captures the you know s- just strange brilliance of Saw Gerrera, and who's just such a captivating character. His reinvention from the Clone Wars cartoon to uh, Rogue One is just maybe the best transition from animated to live action of any Star Wars character. Um, and then they just take it further on this show, and you truly never know what you're going to get when you cut to a Saw scene.
Mm-hmm.
And this one is just so wild. He's just huffing fumes and telling wild stories
Yeah.
while Will is like doing this insanely technical work that uh, could go wrong at any moment.
Yeah.
It's just such a wild scene, and just
Yeah.
very cool.
Oh, and the whole thing is like about, I don't know if indoctrinate is the right word exactly, but it's about indoctrinating Will, or it's about like really getting Will to go kind of all in, right? So threatening him earlier and shooting the other guy in the head, and all of this is about getting Will to go kind of all the way in, which of course Will does, because he's like, how are you, how are you breathing this stuff in? Why did you take your mask off? And Saw tells him, like, do you think I'm crazy? We'll all be dead before the Republic is back, and yet here we are. You're here and ready to fight, and Will ends up taking his mask off and breathing it in too, right? And so, like, the way Saw is describing this rhydo, as
Mm-hmm.
he calls it, the rhydonium, is like that, you know, you're breathing it in and it's ready to explode and all this. And it's like so a symbol or a metaphor for like the
Mm-hmm.
rebellion and revolution. And it's like, come on, Will, are you going to breathe it all the way in? Or are you going to be, you know, halfway there with the mask on? Or are you going to take it off and be 100%, you know, invested in this, right? And that's like
Mm-hmm.
so much of what the show is about. And with all, you know, so many of these different characters, right? Bix is that much more invested here, you know, by the end of this. And so many of the characters are. So anyway, but yeah, it's I will tell you, the first time I watched it, I was like, I don't know what the hell he's talking about. I don't know what the hell's going on. I don't know why they're breathing this stuff in. Like, I had to watch it a second
Mm-hmm.
time before I really understood what that scene was about. I think I do now, and yeah, it's really good.
Yeah.
But it is weird. It's
Yeah.
good weird, but it's weird.
Yeah. No, I think you absolutely nailed it in the description. It is, you know, on the surface, it is just like this crazy Saw Gerrera moment, but like every Saw Gerrera moment that's crazy is like a metaphor,
Yeah,
kind
yeah,
of, and like especially here.
right. Yeah, cool. All right, good. Well, Ryan, it is Sunday night, May the 4th, Star Wars Day. We are
Mm-hmm.
once again kind of getting pretty close to the new episodes coming out before we've recorded about these ones, but you know, I think it's good to take the time to really um, take our time watching them and make sure we can have the most complete conversation about them that we can. So we are not the first podcast to release our Andor episodes. We're not the best podcast to release an Andor episode, but we're doing the best we can. So
We
um,
are a podcast who released an episode about Andor.
yeah,
Yes.
yep.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, so we'll do the same sometime next week. It's crazy when episode 6 got done. I was like, God, we're halfway done. I don't want to be halfway done, which is
No.
that's why so many people were upset about the release schedule. But at the same time, like, I'm really loving getting to like just take off my mask and breathe in the rhydonium of these, you know,
Yeah.
3 episode arcs. So
This is just such brilliant storytelling, and the 3 episode is just, it's a perfect structure.
yeah,
I've been doing the watch 1 episode the night it drops, and then the other 2 the next night, or some variation on that.
yeah,
And yeah, it's the right choice, and they're very intentional and thoughtful about it. So I have no complaints about the release schedule.
yeah. All right. Well, we're going to wrap it up. I will say quickly, this is like secondhand info, and I don't know if it's totally accurate or not, but my friend told me yesterday that he saw something about how Andor, like Andor coming back resulted in more new signups for Disney Plus or resubscriptions, or whatever you want to call it, than any show in the last like couple years or something like that. And then I was trying to help my mom with her Roku TV today. I don't have a Roku TV. I was trying to help my mom with a Roku TV, and like I just went to like the home screen of the Roku or whatever, and there was like a big Andor thing. Like, it's like you have your options, right? Like home, subscriptions, I don't know, settings, whatever, like your menu options, right? Like over on the left on the Roku screen. And like the first one was there, and then underneath that, before all the other settings, was like this big like Andor banner. Like, you can't even use your menu like without like an Andor thing right in it, you know? So I was like, oh wow, they're
Okay.
pushing this show. So and it deserves to be pushed. So that made me happy. But yeah, so anyways, hopefully people are watching it. Hopefully it's finding an audience, because it's great stuff. I'm expecting big things from the next arc, and we're going to be back to talk about that soon. So until then, you can find all of our previous episodes, posts, etc. at blockaderunnerpodcast.com. You can reach out to the show, tell us how you're finding Andor this season, or sharing your thoughts on the show or other Star Wars topics. Blockade Runner Podcast at gmail.com, or follow the show on Blue Sky, Blockade Runner, and we also have a Discord, which is linked to in the show notes. Ryan, where can listeners find you on the internet?
On Blue Sky, standard issue computing and DVD menus. And also check out Flashback 64.
Absolutely.
Yeah, not just the episode we're on, but all episodes.
Yeah, they have a lot of great episodes. They have more than one Star Wars episode. I think you were on another one about Shadows of the Empire earlier on, right? So
Yep.
That's a good one to find, and they have a lot of other great episodes too. So, yeah, definitely do go check out that show. But yeah, until next time, thanks for listening, and we'll be back soon with another episode of the Blockade Runner podcast.